I can definitely relate a lot with what you said in that if you're doing it alone, you can really change your vision a lot, and that's almost to a detriment because then you never get anywhere.
Yep.
You can like think, oh, I'm gonna make my game a Metroidvania, but then what if I added this extra mechanic or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
But if you have artists that you're kind of beholden to, that would entail, having to pay extra money for an artist that maybe is not only working on your game, or maybe you don't have that extra money to spend on. So you really have to plan in advance to make sure, okay, everything is planned. I know exactly what I'm able to do, and I can't really go beyond that. Maybe I can change some little things here and there, but the general scope of the game should stay the same because otherwise it kind of falls apart with the team.
Yep. And that's the big challenge. That's the big challenge with teams. And that's why I don't know about you, but I avoided working with teams for the longest time. And I was the solo dev that most people, when they joined when they subscribed to my channel, that's what I was doing is solo dev. But now it's a team. It's a team effort. And suddenly the idea of a game design document, the idea of a schedule and a budget
Yeah,
makes
very
way more
important.
sense.
Yeah,
At the time, I was like, why do you need that stuff? It's all in my head.
yeah.
But now it's like everybody's got to have clarity, and I'm still learning how to do that. So I'm just really impressed that you're doing that now. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy to me. Most 22-year-olds, myself included, did not know how to do any of that stuff. Do you use game design documents or
Yeah.
anything
So
like
I
that?
I basically had to make one for pitching to a publisher. So ever
They
since
wanted
then,
you to
I
do
was
it. They forced you to,
yeah,
basically.
exactly. So I had
Yeah.
to send it to them to be like so something that's I mean gonna go out on a bit of a tangent, but like the game originally had no RPG combat, and they thought that it would be better with RPG combat, and I completely agreed, but I didn't have the money to do that originally, and
Yeah.
so the publisher really helped me in that regard with providing additional funding to do that, and I had to write a game design document basically proving that I understood, how to make a good combat system, how to make a good RPG that had these new elements. And so ever since then, I'm like, this is the best thing ever. You really need something like this to not go all over the place and make sure that you stay on track.
Wow. That's funny. The publishers I've worked with three. One of them didn't actually turn into a project. I had to buy the project back from them, but that's another story. But the three publishers I worked with didn't require any of that. They were just like, I think I negotiated my way into being in complete control. Actually, creative control was part of the contract. And maybe that's the way
Same
it is
here.
for you as well. But
Yeah.
they didn't ask me anything like that, and I kind of wish they did, Conrad, because
Yeah. I
it
think it
makes things
benefited me at
so
least.
much
Yeah.
easier,
Yeah.
to know in your head, okay, this is what the game design is, this is the loop, these are the mechanics. And for me, Pinstripe, my first game, Pinstripe, took 5 years, and then Neversong took like 2.5. It just took way too long.
Yeah.
And so I think it's great that you're learning now how to do that, and you'll probably have a super successful career because you're going to know how to communicate with a team,
Hopefully.
and stay within the confines of your budget.
Yeah. And I think what you said with Pinstripe, how it took you 5 years, I was in the same boat with my first game. It took me four.
Wow,
And that's
wow.
because I didn't have, a game design document, and it didn't make nearly as much money as Pinstripe did. Um, so you can even just like check the reviews, and the difference is astounding.
Yeah, you
But
can usually look at
yeah,
reviews and know how much the game made financially.
but
So
it was a great learning experience, and that game took me 4 years. And from Kickstarter release to when my current game is going to release is going to be maybe just a bit over one. So a very major improvement with planning. Yeah.
yeah, that's crazy. So you're thinking you can get this done in more than a year? Is that what you said?
Yeah, so it's going to come out this year, and I did the Kickstarter last summer.
That's crazy, man. What a huge. That's an aspiration for me, man. Like I want my next games to take that long, because that's what's so daunting about game development
Yeah,
is it usually ends up turning into 2 years plus if you're not
exactly. Yeah,
careful. You know.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah. I
Well,
think the planning really helps with that. Yeah,
what's that?
I think the planning helps extremely with that, on top of everything else.
What about the planning specifically do you feel? I think this is important to just stick on for a little bit because so many of you guys listening to this podcast right now, planning is the last thing you're thinking about. You're thinking about motivation, staying motivated. You're thinking about money. You're thinking about social media, marketing. What do people think about the game? When really, guys, you should be thinking about the plan, the game design document. So, Conrad, what specifically about the game design document I think what are some things about the game design document that really help you stay within that yearly budget?
Yes, I think the game design document is actually equally important to the milestones, in my opinion. So how most publishers work, in my experience when I was freelancing and with my current game,
Yeah.
is that they set milestones. You have to finish certain things by certain milestones. So maybe you have like 10, and then maybe every milestone is every month or whatever. And then you say you have 10 chapters. You have to finish chapter 1 on this month, chapter 2, etc. And so that really helps, in my opinion, because then you're like, okay, well, chapter 1 has to be finished in this time period, for example.
Yeah.
And then if you don't finish it, maybe you can get an extension here and there, but you can't do that forever. And so you either have to cut the content of the game or make sure that you plan the game in such a way that you know that you're going to be able to finish it in those 10 milestone periods.
Yep.
And so, in my opinion, knowing the milestones before you, in my opinion, what you should do is have the game design document, and then you look at the milestones and see, okay, can I fit everything in these milestones? And if you can't, maybe you should remove some things that are not super important to a game. So maybe like a mini game or something.
Yeah.
And then not only do you get a really tight schedule that way, that is basically, made itself because you have the milestones, you have the game design document, and they complement each other.
Yeah.
But on top of that, maybe you get a better game because it's less bloated, and so the game becomes more focused. So in my opinion, those two things together work really well. So if you don't, even if you don't have a publisher, you can set your own milestones and be like, okay, well, I want to finish this part of the game, like maybe percentage wise. I want to finish 25% of the story by this point.
Mm-hmm.
Then I want to finish 25% of the mechanics by this point, etc. And then you go back and look at your game design document and think about, well, is it feasible to finish all this in this time period? Maybe my game is too big, or maybe you finish everything too fast and you're like, maybe my game's not big enough, which is maybe not normally the case. But I think that's a good way of approaching it, and that's how I've been approaching it. From my end.
I think it's crucial, honestly. I've been learning this more and more and more. I've made a lot of mistakes, even last year. I've made a lot of mistakes as a manager of my studio, and those mistakes are ones that are repeated. These mistakes, they started with my very first game, Coma. They moved on to Pinstripe. The mistakes keep repeating themselves, and I feel like such an idiot because some of the mistakes include things like, oh, I don't need a schedule. I'm just gonna feel it out. Like, this is a very emotional game. I don't want to be limited by a schedule. The story will be hurt if I put together a schedule, milestones, or anything like that. So I'm just gonna feel it out. That's one major mistake I make over and over and over again. Now, granted, it may help the game because my games are very emotional. There's heavy stories in them, so it does need some sort of flexibility with the schedule. But ultimately, what that leads to is a very expensive game. Guys, a long game, 2 years, that's expensive. That's ultimately what that means, is it costs a lot of money.
2 times the yearly salary for everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a huge mistake I've made. Other mistakes are when working with a team member, I assume that they know what I'm talking about, rather than just doing concept art for them or writing out in the game design document the mechanics or how it should feel or games that it's similar to. So these mistakes, if you keep repeating them over and over and over again, what I'm doing right now is I'm just, seriously, Conrad, I'm listening to you thinking, I'm going to do what Conrad's doing. Because at 22 years old, you're clearly focused. And that focus, obviously staying inspired and maintaining that motivation to finish your game is huge. But I think ultimately staying focused and having a direction you're moving and a goal on your map to get to is ultimately what makes you successful, as opposed to so many other game developers out there who are kind of, I don't know the right word, maybe floundering, trying a lot of different things, but not really having a focus and a direction. By the way, guys, feel free to download my free 2D game kit below. It's totally free. It's my treat to you. I used this exact 2D game kit to make a game for PewDiePie in 14 days, and then I got to play it in front of his subscribers, which was really awesome. So download that. Use it however you want. It's my treat to you. Yeah. Okay.